Well, it's eye-popping stuff, really. And in addition to the tip-offs to Jeffrey Epstein that you've been listing, we've just discovered another one that looks like he almost had an inside track into drafting legislation at one point, particular terminology that he wanted. And there is a telling line in some of these communications, almost a catchphrase for Peter Mandelson when he's passing stuff on to Jeffrey Epstein, and it doesn't make him look very innocent. He says, "Please protect." One of the other striking things about this entire story is that the sums of money don't look enormous. The money that appeared to go to Lord Mandelson's partner, not Mr. yet, and to Peter Mandelson, though he claims no knowledge of that, don't look vast. But of course, people will be suspicious. This was all about storing up favours for contacts that would happen perhaps post the political career. As you said, we now have a potential for a police investigation. The Cabinet Secretary is being asked to investigate what went on. Amongst his investigations will be, which email was Peter Mandelson using? Was it his private one? Nothing should have gone to his private one if it was government business. If it was a government one, well, then some of the staff working for him should have known what was happening. As you said, this doesn't reflect well on Keir Starmer. It means that a problem he thought had largely been banished is back to haunt him, but also his Chief of Staff, Morgan McSweeney, who played a big role in not just appointing Peter Mandelson, but we think in slightly prolonging his time in that Washington job when many people thought it was up. Peter Mandelson is a man with an enormous sense of political history. And amongst the many elements of this disgrace is the government now looking at a law to try to remove disgraced peers. It could be known perhaps in future as the Mandelson Act.
Great trip, now heading home.
If Keir Starmer thought today was going to be an opportunity to sell the benefits of his trip to China, fate had other ideas. 7 months after installing Peter Mandelson as ambassador to the United States, Keir Starmer sacked him over his connections to the convicted paedophile Jeffrey Epstein. Today, as even more compromising messages between the two were revealed, Keir Starmer handed out still more punishment.
As the House knows, Peter Mandelson is no longer a member of the Labour Party, having resigned his membership last night, and the House may wish to know that disciplinary action was underway by the Labour Party prior to his resignation. The Prime Minister believes, as does the government, that Peter Mandelson should not retain his membership of the House of Lords or use his title.
For Ronaldo and me to be here, it's literally a dream come true.
That last great job in government has turned into a nightmare. A special bill could now be rushed through Parliament to strip Peter Mandelson and future peers who fall into disrepute of their titles. The leaks of inside information to Jeffrey Epstein carried on into the last hours of his ministerial career after the 2010 general election. Peter Mandelson tipped off Jeffrey Epstein that he'd persuaded Gordon Brown he didn't have enough MPs to form a government. And he revealed to Jeffrey Epstein that a €500 billion bank bailout was about to be announced. Much contact had preceded that. In 2009, Peter Mandelson forwarded to Jeffrey Epstein an interesting note that's gone to the Prime Minister. It contained market-sensitive information which included a proposed asset sales plan. What saleable assets? Epstein asks. Land, property, I guess, Mandelson responds. A few weeks later, a highly market-sensitive analysis of lending by the Prime Minister's top city advisor was forwarded to Jeffrey Epstein almost the moment it arrived in the conduit's inbox. The evidence suggests the sender with the redacted email was again Peter Mandelson.
Within 4 seconds of that reply, someone forwarded it to Jeffrey Epstein. Can't see their name, they're redacted. We can see the redacted name is the same length as Peter Mandelson's redacted name. We can see it's from a device with the same default signature and the same time setting. It's incorrectly set to not British summertime, even though it was the summer. And those are characteristics of Peter Mandelson's BlackBerry.
In December, Peter Mandelson helps out with lobbying against the banker's bonus tax, being brought in by Alistair Darling, then the Chancellor of the Exchequer. Epstein asks, should Jamie Dimon, boss of JP Morgan, a bank Epstein worked with, call Darling one more time? Mandelson replies, yes, and mildly threaten. The advice was followed, and the threat to scrap a London HQ plan was made when Jamie Dimon called Alistair Darling a few days later, as recommended by Alistair Darling's fellow cabinet minister.
I'm shocked. I mean, I've never heard anything like it before. It seems extraordinary behaviour. It's breaching confidences, it's breaching trust, it's letting down your colleagues. I mean, it is a great betrayal.
A few months later, when Peter Mandelson is forwarded detailed minutes of a meeting between Chancellor Alistair Darling and US government advisor Larry Summers on banking reform, he pings them off to Jeffrey Epstein, begging what becomes a bit of a catchphrase: please protect. Epstein then appears to make detailed drafting suggestions on financial services legislation.
I mean, I did see it. I mean, it is, I don't think I've got the vocabulary to describe how shocking it is, the breaches of confidence that were taking place. Alistair Darling certainly had no idea that this was happening.
Within a few weeks, Jeffrey Epstein began payments to Peter Mandelson's partner, Ronaldo da Silva, now his husband. $4,000 a month, which appears to have continued for 3 months.
When I go to the pub, I buy my friends beers, and they buy me beers. And there was never a signed agreement to buy beers in exchange for each other. We never even discussed that I'll buy you a beer, then you'll buy me a beer. But it's clearly socially accepted. It's how pubs work. I think it was socially accepted between Mr. Epstein and the people he corresponded with, including Peter Mandelson, that you got something for something, and that access went one way and money went the other way. And that's what we're seeing happening here.
The Epstein files suggest $75,000 had been paid over a few years earlier. Lord Mandelson said in a weekend statement he didn't recall such payments. The insider tip-offs would be bad enough to any outside contact, but Peter Mandelson's old friend Jeffrey Epstein had only recently been convicted of procuring a child for prostitution. The co-architect of New Labour has said in previous statements he regretted taking Jeffrey Epstein at his word. As more and more contacts emerged today, there were no words from Lord Mandelson.
Well, joining me now is the Labour MP Emily Thornberry, who's chair of the Foreign Affairs Select Committee. Good evening. We saw Catherine MacLeod, the Chancellor's former advisor, call this a betrayal of Mandelson's own cabinet colleagues. Do you think it might also be criminal, and do you want the police to investigate that?
I think it's a betrayal. I think the idea that a cabinet minister would be acting against the interests of the rest of the cabinet and the country is really shocking. And I think that some of the things that we've seen on the face of it is the sort of thing that the police should be looking at. So yes, I think there should be a criminal investigation. I think that this is not enough for him to simply be taken out of the House of Lords. I think that there may well have been criminal activity and he should be prosecuted.
If that is true, and if the payments are true and the emails are true, I can't remember a political scandal like this in decades.
No, neither can I.
This is horrifically damaging,
Yeah.
both to Labour's legacy and the current Prime Minister.
I think it's horrifically damaging for politics in general. I think that when these sort of scandals blow up, we saw it during all the Tory years, you know, when there was scandal after scandal under the Conservatives, and actually all of us were painted with the same brush, you know, and it's so, I mean, disappointing is not the word. I don't know what the word is. I mean, I'm so angry about it. I'm so angry that people could be so venal and behave in this way and try to just look after themselves and somehow or other think that government is beneath them and that they can do whatever they like. It's simply appalling. It's simply appalling.
But isn't it also worse than the sleaze that Labour, daubed the Conservative governments with? And it helps, as you say, people say, you're all the same, you know, you're all ghastly, and this is as bad as anything. I mean, this could finish this government in truth, couldn't it?
We could debate all evening whether some of the things that the Conservatives got up to during, I don't know, COVID contracts and whether or not people died and whether that's worse than what Peter Mandelson has done. I mean, this doesn't get us anywhere, does it?
No, but it helps voters say, well, you're all the same.
Well, we're not all the same.
And you're a government who stood up at the last election and said, we are not like them, we are better than them, And it turns out some of you weren't.
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? Is that actually there are people involved in politics who want to get things done, who are involved in politics because they believe that politics can actually make life better for ordinary people. And that's why we put all the hours in that we do, and we are committed in the way that we do. We are not in it for ourselves. We are in it for society in general. And the majority of politicians, I have to say, you know, across the aisle, come into politics with that idea. And it's this minority who let us down. And I have to say, I am so shocked. Every time I pick up my phone and find out the latest, there's yet another revelation about what it is that he's done. And can I just put on the record, what you have missed is that he also told people about, or told Epstein about matters of national security, about the tunnels. You know, I mean, that is shocking and unforgivable by itself.
Right, but what we also know is that this was a personal appointment of Mandelson as US ambassador, backed by Morgan McSweeney, the Prime Minister's right-hand man. Doesn't somebody need to carry the can for these decisions that effectively pushed Mandelson into this elevated position without going through any of the normal vetting procedures that might have picked some of this up?
So we looked at this as my committee, and it seems that there is two ways of doing due diligence. There's a different way for people who are politically appointed and those who are appointed from within the Foreign Office. But they changed the rules now in relation to political appointments. But what we said at the time was that we wanted to have Mandelson in front of the Foreign Affairs Committee so that we could ask him questions. So we could ask him the sort of questions that, frankly, the public would ask with just, you know, a look on Google. You know, what is this friendship with Epstein? Is it right that you continue to stay in his house once he came out of jail? Why have you done that? Those sorts of questions would have been open for us to ask, and then we would have got some answers on the record. Now, clearly, nobody would have been able to find out the sort of details that we're getting now that the Epstein files are being published. But it is shocking. It's shocking and appalling that this has happened. And, you know, I just think that, I appreciate that we needed to be imaginative and start thinking in a different way when appointing an ambassador to Donald Trump. I understand that. But I do think, given his history, it was important to be as careful as we possibly could do.
And they weren't.
And you know, what is the Foreign Affairs Committee for? But to try and make sure that the Foreign Office is as good as it possibly could be. And we could have done that by interviewing Mandelson before he was sent to Washington.
Emily Thornberry, thank you very much indeed. Well, it's 3 days since the US Department of Justice released the remaining files and new details about Jeffrey Epstein's ties to the former Prince Andrew and his ex-wife Sarah Ferguson continue to emerge. The Epstein files also shed new light on the reaction of the British authorities as details emerged about the US investigation into Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. Here's our Home Affairs correspondent, Simeon Brown.
Each day since millions of documents were published by the US Department of Justice has delivered more detail on how Jeffrey Epstein courted and collected royals like infinity stones. And for the man formerly known as Prince Andrew, the chorus of condemnation is growing louder over his refusal to face the music in America. In the DOJ release is also more detail on their contact with US investigators. When it was made public that US authorities requested the former Prince Andrew testify in June 2020, a police liaison officer from counterterrorism made unusual contact, stating, "Whilst I focus on terrorism, occasionally I am asked to assist with the more sensitive UK inquiries," and requested a conversation in relation to Epstein due to media reporting. In the files is also correspondence between the FBI and the Met. And during the trial of Ghislaine Maxwell, a detective from Specialist Crime asks if the disclosure of Maxwell's co-conspirators will involve any UK or London matters. Despite these questions, a full investigation was never launched. The former prince has always denied any wrongdoing and now says he regrets their friendship. But the DOJ release shows just how embedded Epstein was in the lives of Andrew Mountbatten Windsor and his ex-wife. Epstein was deeply across Sarah Ferguson's finances and handled a sale of share options. In the DOJ files is a wire transfer made for the attention of Sarah Duchess of York for $150,000 in 2001. Later, when Sarah Ferguson was heavily in debt, Jeffrey Epstein not only knew it, he discussed it with friends. In 2011, the former Duchess said publicly that Epstein helped to settle a £15,000 debt. But the files suggest far greater financial and even reputational support when Sarah Ferguson rebranded as an empowerment activist and launched a Mother's Army. What Ferguson did not say was the man helping to fund and maintain it was a convicted child sex offender. In this email, when Epstein is asked if he is happy to pay the annual fee to keep the website running, Epstein says he will gladly pay. Sarah Ferguson has since said she regrets her association with a man who enjoyed playing godfather to the rich and powerful.
Do you think you're the devil himself?
No, but I do have a good mirror.
It's a serious question.
Sorry.
Do you think you're the devil himself?
I don't know. Why would you say that?
Because you have all the attributes.
Yet this was a man given a seat at the highest tables, whilst being at the helm of what has been called the world's most powerful grooming gang. Now, as more revelations emerge, authorities are under pressure to act. And will those who knew him best finally share what they know?
Well, joining me now is the investigative journalist Vicky Ward, who has spent decades reporting on Epstein in the US. Thank you for joining us. Does it strike you as a little odd that despite the Epstein files revealing links to so many rich and powerful people, the most devastating details so far are about the British establishment and royal family?
You know, it is a great irony. And I'm reminded of something that Jeffrey Epstein used to say to sources of mine, and I discounted it at the time. But he used to say, I manage money for the Queen. and when you listen to all of this, it makes me go back to that, you know, because Jeffrey Epstein used to say an awful lot of crap. But it, you know, he was certainly managing money for the Queen's son and the Queen's son's ex-wife, it would seem. And he was certainly very involved with Peter Mandelson and Peter Mandelson's husbands. I mean, you know, and as you say, it's so, yes, I think it is extraordinary. I mean, I think the only thing that would come remotely close to it over this side of the pond is the email to Bill Gates. But you know, but again, that's sort of about women. Bill Gates is not in a position; he's not in the government.
Yeah,
it's not.
Gates has said that that's not true. If you say, as you say, that you know, a lot of what Epstein said wasn't true, you know, might some of these emails, which are all sort of his sourcing, his account of what happened, also be untrue? I mean, might we be judging, you know, jumping to conclusions that are just wrong?
Well, yes, you definitely should. I mean, there's a note in there that I think was a fax about me that's definitely wrong, casting all sorts of. It was when I was reporting on him in 2002 for Vanity Fair. It's a note to my boss saying, you know, what a terrible reporter I am, and that the allegations I'm putting to him about these two sisters, to him and Ghislaine Maxwell, are garbage and, you know, and defamatory and this, that, and the other. Unfortunately, the result of that was that their allegations got pulled from the piece, which was a tragedy not just for them, but for the subsequent hundreds of children who went on to be abused by Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell.
And do you have any sense of what is still to come? I mean, it is obviously striking that the one person about whom there appears to be nothing very damaging is Donald Trump.
Well, that is striking. It's also striking that Donald Trump, it seems to be the person that Jeffrey Epstein was most fixated on in all his email correspondence. And, you know, that's why, I mean, you were playing the clip. Steve Bannon and Epstein became close after Steve Bannon was ejected from the first Trump White House. And, you know, Jeffrey Epstein, you know, had all these theories about money laundering by Trump, you know, collusion with Russia. You know, unfortunately, I don't think that as a result of this DOJ release, which has been so botched right from the beginning, from a year ago when Pam Bondi said she had the whole file sitting on her desk. I don't think we're going to get any real answers, which is deeply disappointing. This side of the Atlantic, I have to say, the survivors, many of them are furious at the way many of their biographical details have been published, when the whole point of the delay was that the Justice Department said they would needed to be careful. And instead, and many of the survivors have said what they've read has been deeply triggering, re-traumatizing. And meanwhile, Epstein's circle, yes, we now know that a lot of the people who claim they didn't really know him or they'd met him once or twice, well, that wasn't true in the case of, Elon Musk and others. But to your point, it hasn't caused a downfall, and I don't see that it will.
Vicky
unlike with you.
Vicky Ward, thank you very much indeed for joining us.
Thank you for having me.